All right, good evening, East Hampton BOE. We're streaming to YouTube. You are being recorded. The phone lines are open. You may begin your meeting.
Good evening. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, first up is a presentation.
Yes, so Dr. Soriano, would you like to open it?
I would. Thank you. Oh, I don't know how many of you have read this book. It came out this year. It's really great. Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist at NYU, and it's gotten a lot of press, especially within the last 6 months. And it ties the mental health crisis in the United States among kids to smartphones and to social media. So we, as a building at the middle school, my leadership team, all the department chairs, our EST, our support staff, our PTA leadership, and also our site-based team are all reading the book. And it's eye-opening. You know, I recommend it to people, but it's scary. So it's not a great read.
Mm-hmm.
And it reinforces everything that we've basically known all along. I'm so thrilled that now we're going on our 12th year of not letting kids have phones out in the building, and that's, you know, attributed to our PTA and site-based leadership from 12 years ago. And Courtney Garneau gets a big shout out for that because she was a big push behind that at the time. And it's made a huge difference in the building. But
You're still doing the no-show.
no-show,
They
yeah.
keep it on their person.
They
for
can
an
have it on their
emergency,
person, but
they can't take it out.
they can't take it out unless a teacher's doing an activity like Rita Green and Karen Nelson
Not allowed
do
to
a film unit. Because as educators, we should model for kids. Here's how you can use it productively.
Mhm.
So right now for this 40 minutes, you're going to take it out. We're going to use it. But then when the time is done, you're putting it away.
Right.
And you know, the best, remember, because you would remember this,
My kids are, yeah.
the blowback we had in the beginning for the first year was extremely difficult. You know, we had a lot of
What year was that?
argumentative. It was 12 years ago. So the blowback was challenging at the time, but now it has stuck.
Right.
Because the consequence is really a parent consequence. If your child's phone gets taken, you have to come and pick it up. And
That was the
what that
blowback.
has resulted in is
Yeah.
you do it once and you have to come to the office. So it's not
Right.
like you go to Will Field or Mrs. Von Frank, I need my phone. You have to come to the main office, to my secretary, which is
Right.
great. And then some parents will say the second time it happens, you can keep it and keep it for 2 weeks.
Right.
And we do that. I must have probably 6 to 7 phones in my office at any given time that can be there for a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's worked really well. But the reason I bring that up is because this gentleman is saying no cell phones until high school, meaning smartphones, no social media until 16. And this is exactly what the Surgeon General has said. 2 years ago, it was all over CNN. The Surgeon General came out and said the same thing. No social media until 16. And this is all great. Definitely read this book. It's really worth it. But it's also not realistic unless there's public policy, unless the government starts to say, this is what we're going to do, you know, statewide or nationwide. Kids are still going to have phones. So that's why.
We'll never go for it. So.
Right. So, but we still have to do something. So it works for our building to have that policy. However, on the education side, I think we should be teaching students what's appropriate use, what's not appropriate use, what's effective, what's not effective. And right after COVID, Denise Rowland, who was in the position before Jacqueline, coming off of a book she had just written called Mommy Look at Me about her use of a cell phone. It was a great book. And her elementary kids had written a curriculum around social media, phone use, and I had said to her at the time, look, this is great that you did this, but we need this here at the middle school. Let's try to come up with a smaller unit that we could do with every student in the building over the course of 3 years. So she modified it and we agreed on 2 weeks. So every middle schooler, just like health, just like technology, just like art, will have 2 weeks of this curriculum in 6th grade. Then they get the next version of that in grade 7, and then they get the next version of that in grade 8. So it builds on what they learn in 6th grade, and it's more age appropriate because there are things that we talk with 6th graders about that we don't talk about, with 8th graders about, and vice versa. And Jacqueline Bates, who is now with us, has picked up on that curriculum because it falls in family and consumer science, and she has really, I would say, renovated and made significant changes. We were just talking about this recently. It's probably 70% different than it was when Denise did it. So even in that short period of 4 years, this stuff changes. What's popular with kids, 4 years ago, it's suddenly not popular. So for us, we need to make it relevant, because if it's not relevant to them, they're going to tune out. And it's not enough to say, we'd like to think that if we say, no, you can't do that, that's an invitation basically to do it. So they need to recognize, in themselves, hey, this is not healthy. This is not nutritious, because she parallels it to her foods curriculum. And it has to come from them. So Jacqueline has really done a beautiful job making it about their experience. So tonight she's going to talk with you a little bit about how she's done that and what kids experience in the classroom with this 2-week unit each year that they're at the middle school. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline. Do you want that, or do you want the board to use?
Does this work?
It should.
Okay. Yes, that's great. All right, good night, or good morning, good night, all of you. I'm Miss Bates, Jacqueline. And this is a little bit about our Intentionally Unplugged that we do at the middle school. So what is the program? Essentially, every grade level is going to be getting 10 days worth of instruction. Each grade level is getting tailored instruction that's more age appropriate and kind of tailored to what they're going to be experiencing when they are using their phones, when they're consuming different types of media, because one of our biggest lessons is media is not always social media. It's podcasts, it's music, it's all the things in between. And a lot of times when I say the word media, they only think of social media. So that's kind of right off the bat, something we have to talk about. Not only is it teaching different targeted lessons, but we're also tying into our school-wide theme of choices. Last year it was mindfulness, and it's so easy to connect these. Last year, mindfulness, making the correct choice, thinking about what you're doing. But this year it's really deciding and making that active choice. What do I want to do with my time? And I'm going to get a little bit more into that, and I think you'll be intrigued to see some of the results. So why do we do this? I'm sure all of you have probably seen that as we go on in the years, we become more and more attached to our phones. I know I can admit that if I don't have my phone on me, I get a little anxious that I'm not connected to who I need to be connected to. And I'm sure kids feel the same way. So it's really important that we're teaching kids how to appropriately use their phone and when to use it and the best way to go about that. So in 6th grade, we do something called Life Before Screens. And our first lesson is just brainstorming, what do you think life was before screens? I had the pleasure of growing up kind of with both. I was in 7th grade when I got my first phone, and it was only a little flip Nokia. I had to pay as I went, or my parents had to. They're not thrilled. But kids today, they grew up with phones. They know nothing else. So we talk about life before phones, and they had some really, really great reflection. They talked about potentially less bullying and what that really meant. There was more face-to-face interaction. One student in particular, and I will never forget it, that last bullet, he said there were different types of bored.
Because now you're bored, you just pick up your phone and you'll find something to do. But when you were bored, when you were younger, you had to go outside and you had to find something to do. And when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I had never thought of that before. So sometimes they say things that I had never even thought of. And I find that really interesting. We also do another lesson called the still face paradigm, which is an experiment about being emotionally available versus physically available. This is essentially a video where it shows a mother and a baby probably around 3 to 6 months years old, 3 to 6 months. And the baby is looking for the mother's attention. The mother is attending to the baby's cooing, interacting with the mother. And as the mother turns her attention away and just gives a still face, the baby is starting to question, why aren't you interacting with me? And the mom picks up the phone, and while she's physically there, she's not emotionally there. And you can see the baby start to cry and point and scream because she wants her mother's attention. And I love to prompt my kids and ask them, well, why do you think the baby's looking for attention? The mom's right there. And that kind of leads into the conversation of, yeah, it's one thing to be sitting in front of someone, but if you're not engaging, you're losing that human interaction. We also talk a little bit on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is something that I love to talk about because that's psychology, and that's a lot of fun. So we talk about how it's important to feel comfortable and to feel safe before you can learn. If you come to school and you're not fully fed and had a good night's sleep, are you able to learn? Those types of things and how they relate to technology. 7th grade is definitely the most fun, in my opinion, when it comes to this curriculum. This is when it becomes very eye-opening. So we do active and passive screen use. We compare it to the food pyramid, how you want all of your leafy greens, your legumes, all those things at the bottom. That's what you want the bulk of your diet to be. And as you go up that pyramid, it becomes the things you want in moderation, right? So we compare that to our screen usage. And we talk about how active screen use, it requires brain power. It requires you to think, to create. Passive is just scrolling. You're just consuming. It's kind of brain rot, for lack of a better term. Our emotional effects of screen use. I love putting this question on the board. Does technology make us feel more alone? I have the kids put Post-its all over, and it really makes them think. I don't know if there's really ever a correct answer to that, but I love hearing their justification on why they chose what they chose. And then social media mindfulness. Dr. Soriano touched about it a little bit, but even on social media, there's a whole different world now. You're comparing yourselves constantly to the people you're seeing. People are only documenting the highlights of their life and they're not documenting the rest of it. So it's really hard to start comparing yourself and wondering, why am I not measuring up to everybody else? And I feel like in middle school, that's a really hard thing to navigate when middle school is already so hard to begin with. So what we do is we do this activity where I have students estimate how much time they spend on their phones. This is always a lot of fun because they give maybe 10 hours a week. It ends up being a lot more. This particular student estimated, he was very honest. He estimated that he spent 77 hours a week. And he was ballpark correct. They have to figure out if it surprised them and why not, why or why not. Then they have to calculate their top 5 most used apps using their screen time. I'm not sure if you guys have iPhones, but every Sunday you get that little notification that says you spent this many hours a week on your phone. And if you actually look at it, it'll tell you spent this many hours on this many hours on this. It's very interesting to look at that data. So we actually spend a whole class period and we calculate that data. We use our math skills and we get into graphing. So this student actually graphed that he spent 32 hours a week on Snapchat, which when you think about it, Snapchat, you're just taking a picture, you're sending it and you're done. So 32 hours is a lot. So this is always very eye-opening to them. And I try to make these authentic activities so that it's not a punitive, you shouldn't be using social media. It kind of makes them be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my time? So our top 4 apps of this quarter, with 1 week, we just did this last week. So this was from data from 2 weeks ago, across 5 classes. And a lot of 6th graders don't have phones. So this is mostly 7th and 8th.
I'll tell you what they
But they'll
are.
wait till the 8th, like my daughter will not get a phone until she's in
Right.
8th grade. So I'm wondering, Is there a bunch of kids still left without phones?
There are, actually, and a lot of the times, even when we get to this activity, I have students calculate, if you're not on your phone, what other screen time are you looking at? Because a lot of them, they say, oh, I don't have a phone, but I'm on my PS4 all night. So that type of thing, and they calculate how much time they spend on their gaming consoles and on their Chromebooks even. So our classes, across 5 classes, spent 526 hours on TikTok. They spent 310 hours on Snapchat, 197 on YouTube, and 62 on Instagram. The TikTok definitely surprised me, but when I think about TikTok and the nature of it, and it's just scrolling, and you can't even see the time in the corner of the phone anymore. It just becomes an endless pit. So a lot of us, and myself included, sometimes can get sucked into that trap. Our 8th grade focus. This is where we start to kind of turn it into what can you do now? So we talk about establishing healthy boundaries as it relates to social media and media consumption in general. What can you control? Control the controllables. Instead of going on your phone tonight, can you go out and play with a friend? Can you talk on the phone instead of messaging? That type of thing. Our second lesson is connecting to what counts. Who do you feel connected to? Who are people that you can reach out to? And what can you do to ensure that that connection stays strong over time? Virtual connections, they're great, but they can only get you so far. That will never, an in-person connection will never be replaced by a phone. And lastly, we do a lot of reflecting in 8th grade. You know, we build upon the lessons as we go, and we talk about setting goals and boundaries going forward. So it's very reflective, and the students really get the chance to think about their usage and what they would like to change about it. And 8th grade, we also, lastly, we make lists of every app that's in our phone. This usually takes 2 periods because they have hundreds that they don't even realize they have. So this is actually a student example. They only had 52 apps. But we go through, we type all of our apps, then they have to go through and classify the apps based on, is it active media use, is it passive media use, and how do they think it affects them using kind of the stoplight method. Red is not good for you, yellow maybe in moderation, green, you feel free to freely use it. And then they have to actually go through and highlight and bold apps that they feel like they could delete. And by the end of day 3, we had deleted 359 apps. I will say some kids, they say, I'm just going to re-download them, and that's fine. But are you really going to go through and re-look them all up and down? Probably not. So overall, I see a lot of good things come out of this, and it's just really fun, especially when we do this, for them to just compare and for me to overhear them saying, whoa, I didn't realize. A lot of us don't. So just a brief synopsis, but this is essentially what we're covering when we do intentional unplugged.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the watches? Is it similar, or, I mean, do you classify those? Is that more of a way of contact, or?
I think the watches are much more of a way of communication. We do, that is part of our,
We added that
no-show.
this year, so no show on those too. Yeah.
That has been really great. I feel like watches, though, it depends on the student. It depends on the person. Some of them do text on it, but some of them do use it as a watch. So, I feel like, though, on watches, at least me, I don't think you can play games on them unless I'm naive.
No, I think you're naive.
Yeah, so the watches, I haven't really seen a problem with, mostly because we do have the no-show policy. But even before.
But they're not
we
without
did,
social media.
No.
So that
You
cuts
can
out that.
constantly get notifications,
Right.
though. You can
Right.
get Instagram, somebody liked this, somebody
Yeah.
liked this, so it's constantly in your brain.
Thank you.
I have news so I have news at a school. So 2 of our esteemed principals are actually at Scope Run. They were selected to go to aspiring superintendent program, which is a big honor to be part of. So they are at a meeting. So I have some news at a school. So John Marshall, Halloween parade was a huge success. I was there. It was great as always. Friday, November 8th is our annual Veterans Day tribute celebration. The program begins at 8:45 a.m. and all are welcome to attend this special event. John Marshall had a productive superintendent's conference day yesterday. Instructional staff spent part of their day looking at assessment data and how to best use this data to inform instruction. Non-instructional staff received co-teaching training and a course in CPR. Kathy's had to go to a wake. Reminder, Friday, the football game. Congrats to our football team that made the playoffs. Incredible accomplishment. They play Saturday, I believe, at 1 p.m. at Hills West. I think I'm right. High school. Sarah gave me 14 pages to read, which is great upset. Hispanic Heritage Fair, outstanding event celebrating Hispanic culture through food, art, and dancing. Thank you, Lauren Bennett and Andrea Frankenbach. That's Andrea Hernandez for organizing. Thank you to all our families who participated and contributed food. It was delicious. Science research student update. Sam Ruano will be using the beam at Brookhaven National Lab tomorrow, November 8th, to get more accurate measurement of plastics found in shellfish. That might be the end of the world. I don't know. Every time somebody uses that, a very big deal for her, but also a big step forward for the program with getting access to our students to the lab. Jenny Ross in the Hospitality Club, which the board is very familiar with. Culinary classes are each preparing different chowders and competing against one another for Best in Class Award. They will also be eligible for the People's Choice and Most Unique Award. This is to benefit the Springs Food Pantry. Then on November 14th, the Hospitality Club is baking butternut squash soup for 50 seniors at St. Michael's Senior Housing. Adriana Rango Guzman, who you all know because he presented a very dynamic presentation here. Yeah. Well, he is going to Puerto Rico for the Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Conference. He is a Long Island delegate, and he is one of 7 to go to New York State. College applications. Guidance has processed 1,153 applications to date. Just one more thing for Sarah. Next week, December board meeting will take place at the Transportation Center. Sarah will be highlighting the auto program. So I thought it best to do it in their garage. So
great.
that is where we will be housing and having the board meeting.
December 7th.
That's a great idea. I haven't been there yet. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's a great
Oh, it's
idea.
awesome.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I've been by it, but I've been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the 10th.
The 10th.
It's the 10th.
10th. December 10th.
That's great.
Okay.
Will you remind us that we're in the
So Dr. Soriano, it's a good question. It is so hot in here because it should be 70 degrees in November, and we are bringing in air from the outside, and the superintendent is very uncomfortable.
Air conditioned one at a time during heat season, so.
Yes.
We don't have 6 like.
All right, so that's all.
Yes. That's it.
LTV, do we have any public comments?
We have no callers on the line.
So can I have, I make a motion for the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Superintendent's report and recommendations. Non-instructional appointments, senior office assistant. Recommended that the board approve the non-instructional appointment of Tanya Gregg to the position of senior office assistant. Can I have a motion?
We'll make a motion. Second.
And she's just moving to the transportation center.
Great.
Longtime employee.
All in favor?
Aye.
Non-instructional appointment, senior office assistant. Recommended that the board approve the non-instructional appointment of Linda Hellberg to the position of senior office assistant. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion. Second.
Just a different title.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Non-instructional appointment for a bus driver. Recommended that the board approve the non-instructional appointment of Jorge Aranzazu to the position of school bus driver.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Recommended that the board approve the following annual intermunicipal appointments for the 2024 to 25 school year. And it's payroll services under the Springs municipal agreement, payroll services under the Springs, and benefit services under the Springs intermunicipal agreement.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Yeah, we have an IMA with Springs for providing these services. These are the people in our district who are going to be providing those services. Springs is compensating East Hampton. Again, it's a great shared service benefiting both both districts. And again, I said before, we're hoping to continue to expand this, going again both ways. We've really talked to the school district about different areas to support each other.
All in favor?
Aye.
Recommended that the board approve the contractual appointment of Kevin Quinn to the position of an instructional permanent substitute. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contract agreements. Resolved that the board approve the following contract agreement for the 2024 to 25 school year. Resolved that the board approve the education services contract between Wayne Scott Common School District and East Hampton Union Free School District for the education of a student known to the Board of Education during the 24 to 25 school year in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in said education services contract, and authorizes the president of the Board of Education to sign the contract. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Another, basically, Wayne Scott asked for some help, and we were able to provide it. Thank you, Sarah McGuire and Stephanie. Every administrator was involved, and thanks Deb Halbert, Wayne Scott. So.
That's great. All in favor?
Aye.
Student trips. Recommended that the board approve the following student trips for the 24-25 school year. The Build On student trip and the high school student trip to Tilly Center and American Dream. And I have a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
These are, well, Build On we do every year.
Wonderful
And the other one's
experience.
Music trip, yep.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Oh. All in favor?
Yes.
Donation. Recommend that the board accept with gratitude a donation from Picture Piers, the Hamptons, Inc. in the amount of $15,000 to be used for expenses related to the East Hampton Middle School's Do Good, Be Good Club. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Great.
And this is the club Charlie's talked about
Right.
a lot, and we are very appreciative of this donation, and
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Thank
And
you.
they met last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago, and they had 10 kids. So it started with 2,
Right now.
and then now it's up to 10.
Oh,
That's great.
So we'll see how it goes.
Recommended that the board authorize the budgetary increase in the amount of $38,750 for the 2024-25 school year. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
these donations.
Hang on.
Oh, do we know the donation?
I didn't we get a vote on
I
that?
don't
We
think,
didn't get a vote
I
on
don't think we
donation.
voted on the last
Yeah,
one.
Oh, on the donation?
No, Justine and I both did donation.
No, but we didn't say.
Oh, we
all-
didn't say
All in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now you're
No.
at 709.
Yeah. So
What is this one?
we already did motions for it, so now it's just all in favor.
Aye.
This was the,
These were the donations, yeah.
No,
increasing.
Yep.
Increase.
increase organization.
Recommend that the board approve budget transfers for the 2024 to 25 school year. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Anybody have any?
Okay, so this is primarily to just adjust the salaries, related to payroll, so we have it on the slide in the correct place.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Recommended that the board authorize the funding of certain reserves using its refund resulting from the withdrawal of the East End Workers' Compensation Plan. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Yeah,
Second?
I got a question. So we're gonna change
Do we have a second though?
Yes.
vehicles, what?
I think so.
Second.
Okay.
I thought we did too. I mean,
No,
So-
we're not doing anything.
We're doing the reserve funding, that's what we're talking about here?
We're moving money, $119,000.
No, we withdrew from that, so we withdrew from that.
withdrew from the East End Workers' Comp Plan on June 30th of last year.
Okay,
They were holding a certain amount of money of ours as part of the consortium. We have received that back as a refund. I'm recommending to you that you put it in the reserve for workers' comp costs,
Right.
so that way it can be used for future workers' comp expenses as they come up from time to time. Without
Makes
this
sense.
motion, it's just gonna go general fund balance. At the end of the year, it's gonna presumably left over and not necessarily go to future workers' comp costs. So this is the best way to ensure that the money, which has been sitting with the consortium for 2 decades, is now going to be in our reserve for future workers' comp costs.
Why did we get out of East End Workers' Compensation?
Board approved the withdrawal of it probably at this point 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Because we were able to control our costs better by running it here. We had more knowledge about what the injuries were. We were able to support our employees better when they had an injury, but also contest some of the claims against the district by being more control of the information. And the board approved through an RFP, a third-party administrator to run the program for us, but we are exercising that control rather than stuck in a consortium.
All in favor?
Working really
Aye.
well.
Aye. Recommended that the board approve the revocation of the charging schools meal policy. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
So this was just changing the treatment policy.
Right, so you have, the policy committee reviewed this, you have 2 policies that are largely duplicative. So this is taking out the older one and just leaving the newer one that the board had adopted some years ago.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
First policy reading. Recommend that the board approve the first reading of revised policies, administration of the budget, petty cash funds and cash in school buildings, fixed asset inventories, accounting and tracking. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
All business?
Nothing.
New business? No, nothing new. Public comments? Is there anybody on the line?
We have no callers on the line.
Okay. So motion to adjourn?
Make the motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good night. Thank you, all TV.
You got it. Good
Thank
night.
you.